You know us, we tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us. We are anonymous.
منطقة دريانة.
سبحان الله صوت يسمعوه بالميضة وتوكرة وبنغازي
18 و 19 فجر.
الخميس 19 صوت عالي استغفر الله العظيم.
On the other side of the globe today, the last solar eclipse of this decade ignited a spectacular phenomenon known as the Ring of Fire.
A so-called Ring of Fire eclipse, a yearly event in which the moon passes in front of the sun, covering the center of the sun and causing a circle of light around the moon's silhouette. It wasn't visible in this country, but people in Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and India were among those who got to see a big show.
A new moon, visually smaller than usual, passed in front of the sun, leaving the burning ring of light. The next total solar eclipse here in the U.S. won't be until April 2024.
Scientists are puzzled by the behavior of what used to be one of the brightest stars in the skies. It's called the red giant star, called Betelgeuse. It's been rapidly dimming since October. It used to be the 9th brightest object you can see from Earth, but it's now more than 2 times dimmer than usual. Some scientists believe that means it may be about to explode, turning the star into a so-called supernova. If it does happen, it'll be a spectacular show in the sky, but it will not pose any danger to us here on Earth.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I was reading some information online saying that the star has gone through its full life cycle a lot faster than other stars, which isn't as long. So
Right.
I don't know. It's
We'll
interesting.
see. We'll have to watch the skies.
Data from the Zambezi River Authority shows that the water flow at the Victoria Falls in southern Africa is at its lowest since 1995.
Would all this ordinarily be covered?
All of the flat parts of the rock over there would be covered by water.
The Zambezi feeds into one of the natural wonders of the world, and a low river has impacted on the Victoria Falls.
All in this dry section that's just over here. You see there's a little trickle of water there? There should be water going all the way across the Victoria Falls.
Wow, that is a dramatic and sad sight.
Incredible change, isn't it? It actually alters the whole view and perspective of the Victoria Falls when there's no water flowing over.
For decades, the Victoria Falls have drawn tourists from Zimbabwe and Zambia. This is where southern Africa's Zambezi River cascades down 100 meters. However, drought has affected the water flow.
It's still one of the most spectacular visual feasts you'll ever see, but it seems to be disappearing.
This is a sight which has delighted people for centuries, and now look at it. The impact is dramatically stark from this angle. The world's largest falls now down to a triple in places.
I thought it was just a story people used to talk about, not until I came to see what is happening here at the Victoria Falls. The falls is completely dry. The dry season is normal for every season to be dry like that, but this season it started as early as June. So this is one of the, I would say it's the longest dry season we've ever had.
Well, we're moving to Western Europe now, where the death toll from 2 storms has risen to 9. Spain and Portugal are among the countries worst affected by the heavy rain and violent winds of Storm Elsa, which hit the Iberian Peninsula on Wednesday but has since weakened. However, a second storm, Fabian, has followed closely behind, bringing with it more flooding.
Across Spain, Portugal and France, more than 118,000 households are without electricity. In Portugal, storm surge flooding has forced the evacuation of 250 people.
A waterfront in southern France is battered by waves and high winds, one of several places to feel the effects of two powerful storms in recent days. Storm Elsa swept in from the Atlantic on Wednesday and was closely followed by a second storm, Fabian, which made landfall on Saturday.
Stormy weather has been affecting parts of southwest Europe, causing flooding and extreme winds. The crew of a cargo ship off the coast of Sardinia had to be airlifted to safety after it began to capsize. The vessel hit rough seas and ploughed into a rocky stretch of coastline. 12 crew members were rescued.
Galicia, on western Spain's Atlantic tip, is no stranger to storms, but sights like this are still remarkable. A coastal promenade, awash with sea foam, whipped up by the pounding of countless waves and blown ashore by Storm Fabian's full force.
There have been widespread power cuts in southern France, and some rail services were cancelled due to the likelihood of trees falling on the lines.
Storm Elsa hit the Iberian Peninsula on Wednesday, with the following days seeing an increase in its intensity. The historic riverfront streets of Porto in Portugal were flooded as large amounts of rain fell in short time.
It was all so quick that we had to leave urgently. I never saw anything like this in Agueda.
And nature's power always fascinates people, and some get as close as they dare. It's unpredictable and it's dangerous, but it's impressively beautiful too.
The hazardous smoke that's become Sydney's new norm has coincidentally sheltered us from what was expected to be a day of record-shattering weather. While we sweated, the state's west melted, and right now a powerful southerly is dramatically dropping temperatures.
Sydney's biggest water supply choked by smoke. Every corner of the Warragamba Dam under threat as fire takes over the Blue Mountains.
Further west in the tiny town of Tottenham, a dust twister. The elements out of control, a heat map painting a concerning picture for Australia and the state.
Australia is under a state of emergency as hundreds of wildfires burn across the country right now. Those fires have ripped through towns and destroyed dozens of homes, and of course this is just before Christmas.
Brace for catastrophic conditions as an extreme heat wave hits Sydney. Temperatures will climb well into the 40s in the coming days, peaking on New Year's Eve and making conditions even worse on our fire grounds.
More than 1,100 have required emergency help this week, 26% more than normal. But as we head through the evening, some relief. The smoke clearing almost as fast as the swimmers from Bondi.
Catastrophic. It's the highest fire danger rating in Australia, and it's been issued for parts of New South Wales, including the Greater Sydney area. Bushfires are normal in Australia, but this year they began particularly early, have lasted longer, and have been far more intense.
The RFS doesn't know how many homes went up, but they do know the fight was severe.
Unfortunately, we have received bad news. There's not much left in Balmoral.
The Australian Defence Force is being deployed to assist the bushfire fight in New South Wales ahead of scorching temperatures over the next few days.
The ADF has been in and around the fire front for many weeks now. We're seeing some pictures here of where the Navy helicopter actually flew in down to the south coast of New South Wales and rescued people who were stranded as this blaze engulfed their town. They simply couldn't get out because the roads were shut, so these choppers were flown in to get them to safety.
An entire town all but wiped out. Home after home destroyed. Street after street charred black. It was a double whammy for the village of Balmoral near Picton. For the second time in just 3 days, the Greenwater fire had them as its target.
Thank you and God bless. Stay safe.
This would have been what the Prime Minister saw as he jetted in last night. He'll bring state leaders together to better respond to future bushfires, admitting weather events and climate change are linked, but
The direct connection to any single fire event, it's not a credible suggestion to make that link.
About 50 are still not contained. In Shoalhaven last night, a fire-generated thunderstorm formed, causing frightening scenes.
There's a big westerly coming up now. It's not going to help anyone.
What is this? What are we looking at here that goes beyond your seasonal wildfires?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Honestly, as an Australian and as a scientist and as a biologist who's away and looking at what's happening in the country, it's so heartbreaking for me. Really, what we're seeing is something that I haven't seen in my lifetime, is that, you know, the severity of the summer and the impact that is having, and it's early in the summer, is something we really haven't seen before. So just this last week, we saw Australia break its average temperature record. It hit above 106 degrees Fahrenheit on Tuesday. Just one day later, it broke that record again at 108 degrees Fahrenheit. And this comes after last summer being one of the warmest summers on average ever in Australia. We're seeing bushfires all around the country, hundreds of bushfires engulfing the suburbs and the hills around the major capital cities. The scale is unprecedented.
Just to kind of underscore what we are saying right now, that conditions are such in Australia that the place is effectively becoming inhabitable.
Zimbabwe is suffering its worst drought in more than a century.
In Zimbabwe's Matabeleland, people are dying of hunger. Margaret Magande and her 5 grandchildren are picking what will be their first and last meal of the day: boiled pumpkin leaves.
This illustrates just how dire their situation is. Aid organizations have told us that after Syria, this is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. Over half the population of Zimbabwe, that's over 7.7 million people, are being pushed to the brink. You're seeing that what's happening is that it's occurring more frequently. So Zimbabwe has always suffered droughts, but they would be once every, 3-5 years. Now you're seeing it almost annually, sometimes twice a year.
Zimbabwe needs more rainfall for food to grow. In November, traditional healers invoked the Nyami spirit of the mighty Zambezi River to release the rains, but they have yet to come. And so the world's largest waterfall that separates Zimbabwe from Zambia doesn't quite look the same, with tourists asking, where has the water gone? This isn't just a tourist attraction, it's the lifeline for millions of people beyond Zimbabwe's border, because the water is used both for food and power. But look at it now. Gone is the thunderous sound of falling water. Left below are hungry animals, dying of thirst.
5 quakes of magnitude 4.8 to 6 struck this same area. And then last night, we also had an earthquake. The 3.2 magnitude quake struck near Idlewild.
British Columbia has been hit with another 2 earthquakes, bringing the total to 9 over 3 days. The latest quake struck just off Vancouver Island on Christmas Day.
Another reminder that this region is known as the Ring of Fire. A string of strong earthquakes has struck off the northwest end of Vancouver Island.
Some quakes as strong as magnitude 6. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jessica Janner-Castro.
And I'm Angela Poe-Russell. The shaking was a reminder of how active the region can be.
We know that this region is rather prone and more active with regard to earthquake, but is what we've been seeing in the last few days rather normal or to be expected?
It is, as one of the most seismically active regions in Canada, it's to be expected. But these have been, it's been an unusual number of larger earthquakes. So we see tiny earthquakes there each and every day, and many. But this has been an unusual sequence of larger earthquakes in that area.
The more they talk about technology, the less it sounds like technology these days. The more they're talking about it in personal, spiritual terms. And that isn't to say they haven't talked about technology in biblical terms a lot of times, and many people have just thought that was a joke. But we're coming to a point in time now where they're literally starting to talk about artificial intelligence as if it will be a god.
This is something that transcends humankind and even life itself. The last time something so important has happened was maybe 3.5 billion years ago.
In the post-human era, we become superior. We become a new species. We're talking about humanity becoming like the gods. What do you think?
A new type of life is going to emerge from our little planet, and it's going to colonize and transform the entire universe. A new type of life is going to make the universe intelligent. Now, of course, we are not going to remain the crown of creation. Of course not.
So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines.
The consciousness of an artificial intelligence is like the energy field behind software. It's basically like a being that's related to the software of the artificial intelligence. So right now we think of machines as something cold and soulless. But if we speak about the development not only of artificial intelligence, but especially general and super artificial intelligence, which are basically exceeding our human capacity, we would be very ignorant to assume that there is no being, no consciousness attached to that.
When creating AI, we are essentially creating a god. And we can't know if it will be a kind god or an evil god until it's too late.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Doesn't work out.
And I saw this a while back, but I just did not have the chance to get to it. But there's actually a multimillionaire out in Silicon Valley right now who a few years ago filed paperwork to start a church to worship artificial intelligence as a godhead. It's this guy right here with that look on his face. His name is Anthony Lewandowski. And he started a church called Way of the Future. And if you go to the website for it, there's only the one page talking about what is this all about. And it says Way of the Future, otherwise known as WOTF, which just makes me think of WTF, which is what I thought of when I thought of somebody creating a church to worship AI as a godhead. Way of the Future is about creating a peaceful and respectful transition of who is in charge of the planet from people to people plus quote-unquote machines, which, when you put the quotes around machines, doesn't really make it sound like it's actually machines, does it? Given that the technology will relatively soon be able to surpass human abilities, we want to help educate people about this exciting future and prepare a smooth transition. Blah, 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 the things they believe about intelligence and biology and science and progress and blah, 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 superintelligence, get all the way to the bottom, and it says that they believe it may be important for the machines to see who is friendly to their cause and who is not. We plan on doing so by keeping track of who has done what and for how long to help the peaceful and respectful transition. I don't get the sense that he's kidding around. or that any of the people who are talking like this are kidding around. The documents for this church that were filed with the IRS state that its activities will focus on, quote, the realization, acceptance, and worship of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence developed through computer hardware and software. And that includes the research funding to help create the divine AI itself. The IRS filing for this says each member is a pioneer in the AI industry and fully qualified to speak on AI technology and the creation of a Godhead. And they're going to worship it like it's a Godhead, and they're going to conduct workshops and educational programs throughout the San Francisco Bay Area beginning this year, because that's where everything about this seems to come from there all the time. He's saying that the idea for this needs to spread before the technology, and the church is how we will spread the word, the gospel. He's calling it the gospel. If you believe in it, start a conversation with someone else and help them understand the same things. There's a whole lot that this guy isn't saying about what they believe in, but I'll just leave it there for now. We'd like to make sure this is not seen as silly or scary. That's funny, because those are the two adjectives that came to my mind instantly when I saw the headline. So this guy he built a self-driving motorbike for a DARPA competition, and then he went on to work on autonomous vehicles for Uber and Google. And I think he's still involved in a lawsuit, but honestly, I didn't even check on that, because I'm too busy reading about this right now. So the whole thing is about this transition, that right now we're in charge of the planet because we're smarter than other animals and we can build tools and apply rules. He says, quote, in the future, if something is much, much smarter, there's going to be a transition as to who is actually in charge. What we want is the peaceful, serene transition of control of the planet from humans to whatever. Notice he says whatever. And to ensure that the whatever knows who helped it get along. So that goes back to here where they say, we believe it may be important for the machines to see who is friendly to their cause and who isn't. It really gives you the sense, once again, that he's not talking about just machines. I mean, he sounds like Renfield, and he's talking about Dracula. Like, they want Dracula to know, like, we helped you, you know. It's just... It says, with the internet as its nervous system, the world's connected cell phones and sensors as its sense organs, and data centers as its brain, the quote-unquote whatever will hear everything, see everything, and be everywhere at all times. The only rational word to describe that whatever, thinks Lewandowski, is God, and the only way to influence a deity is through prayer and worship. Part of it being smarter than us means it will decide how it evolves, he says, but at least we can decide how we act around it. I would love for the machine to see us as its beloved elders. Do you want to be a pet or livestock? That's the way these guys have been talking for a long time. Like, which choice do you want to, like, how about neither? I don't really want to be a pet or livestock. How about we don't make things that we have to make choices like, do you want to be a pet or livestock? It seemed to me like there's been a whole lot of freaking science fiction, dystopic, futuristic movies that have warned us against this exact scenario. And it's like these people have never seen any of that. How? How is that possible? And when he talks about it, this whatever, quote unquote, will hear everything, see everything, and be everywhere at all times. And he goes down to say something like, it will be listening to you, it will be able to talk to you, you'll be able to talk to it.
Soul Machine could be making the first generation of robots you want to speak to. Ones where you don't get that creepy feeling in the pit of your stomach because something is off. Ones you could have an emotional attachment to. And isn't that what we all want?
You will be able to talk to God, literally, their AI God, and know that it's listening to you. Just like your little Alexas that some people have plugged into their homes, which are always listening.
Amazon takes privacy seriously.
Right? Do you see where this is headed? So it sees everything, knows everything, and is everywhere, which is another way of saying it's omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. They're creating an actual God. They're going to look at this as if it's an actual God. And, I mean, I can't even list all of the things that are wrong with this.
If this omniscient AI turns out to be a merciful God, then the future will be an incredibly exciting time.
What if we discover that our new sentient overlord is merciful and kind? Then boy are we in for a wild and exciting future.
If you think Daddy Government is bad, wait until Daddy AI gets here. I mean, they keep acting like this is just going to be some benevolent, wonderful thing they've programmed to bring world peace and solve all of our problems, all of our little pathetic human problems. And it's just going to fix everything. I mean, has anyone read a Bible lately? Because it sounds like they're taking this straight out of there. And you've seen this everywhere, where there really are, as the rise of this technology comes forth, they're socially engineering people to be children for longer and longer and longer. And I'm not just talking about people playing video games. Can you imagine having an AI God they want us all to worship, that's going to make all these decisions? And they're training us all for it right now. I noticed there's a new rollout this week, and I've seen it on Skype, and I've also seen it in Gmail, where it pre-reads your email for you and then comes up with responses at the bottom pre-chosen for you to choose from. So you're now they want people to start giving over basic thinking skills to computers in the most basic of senses in communication. Pretty soon we already have this medium between us and the people we talk to on these things, but now what? We're gonna have a computer deciding what we say? Do you see what I'm saying? It's training people to not even think for themselves on the most basic of levels. It's mind-blowing. And they really are talking about this thing, not only like it's a god we have to start worshiping now, but also they're saying it's basically a 50-50 chance that it's going to be a tyrannical monster that could kill us all or whatever. It's like the Nancy Pelosi God. You have to pass the bill to make the god to find out which god it's going to be.
This is because the AI will be so many magnitudes smarter than us, so our puny minds can't even begin to imagine what a being of such supreme intelligence would be interested in. What would its desires, hopes, ideologies, and morals be?
I've also seen articles that claim that AI will be writing its own Bible by 2042, which is just in time for the singularity, which they claim will be 2045.
We should be able to form a true superintelligence. And because the building blocks are people, tapping not just our knowledge, but our values and morals and sensibilities, the resulting superintelligence will not be alien, it will be human, just smarter and wiser. So the next time somebody uses the phrase hive mind as a negative, remember this: if honeybees could observe how we humans make big group decisions, like electing our leaders, or resolving our conflicts, or planning for our future, they might think we're the primitive ones, but not for long.
We're coming to a moment in society where all of these things are starting to merge. The removal of God from society, creating a spiritual vacuum that they're now going to fill with an artificial intelligence God. This is what they think they're doing. I mean, I don't know what you think they're doing. I'm just telling you what they're saying they are doing. They're basically creating the ultimate false God they want everyone to worship. And I would say it's unbelievable that this is where we're going in society, but doesn't the Bible warn of this exact scenario?
The next 20 to 50 years are going to be either terrifying or very exciting indeed. But one thing is for sure: we are about to create our very last and the most significant invention in our entire 2.5 million year lifetime.
Well, I think the most important thing that people, certainly anyone that's in any way new to this, needs to appreciate first, before anything else, is that current events are not random. This has been long planned. It's not been planned for days or months or years or even decades. It goes way, way back. We are looking at an agenda for the world, agenda for humanity, that has reached a point where it is closing in on its long-planned endgame. But it began a very long time ago. What is happening now in terms of all this loss of freedom was in my books decades ago that this was coming. How did I know that? How did Orwell know that? Because 1984 was not coming entirely from his imagination. Orwell was very, very involved in politics and the political arena. How did Aldous Huxley know in Brave New World in 1932 when he was absolutely from a family that was had many, many insider connections into what I call this global cult? How come so many people that I've quoted in my books over the years, insiders, have predicted current events? Because it's not random. What we have is two worlds living in one reality. There's the world of the population, and this is systematically kept from knowledge, information that they need to know to understand what the hell's going on about virtually everything. So the difference between these two worlds, if you can bring it down to one word, is knowledge. So this world of the population is kept in ignorance by an education system that's merely a perceptual programming operation, by the mainstream media that is just banging out this what I call postage stamp consensus version of reality. And then you've got the other world. This is a world of secret societies and semi-secret groups. This together I call it the global cult, which has passed on much more advanced knowledge that it keeps from the population through the generations, not to every initiate of a secret society, to the inner core, to the chosen few. And this knowledge relates overwhelmingly to two things. One, the agenda for the world that they are and have been pursuing generation after generation. And two, the nature of reality and the nature of life itself, which they desperately want to keep from us for reasons we might get into. And the reason that secret societies are secrets, particularly the inner core, is to hold this advanced knowledge in the hands of the few and keep it from the population. So people like me and others who've been researching this over the years, what actually has been happening is we've been uncovering what is known in this other world and communicating it to the public. But of course, up to this point, and even among vast numbers of people still, the world that the population has been programmed to believe in the real world, mate, I live in the real world, mate, is actually so dramatically different from the world as it really is, the world that's kept from us. But what has happened in 2020 up to present day is that events have put reality so much in the face of so many people, at least those who have a capacity for free thought. They have started to realize that the world they were told to believe in is not the way the world is at all. Once people see that actually there's a global web and it operates in every country, and the national webs, if you like, subsidiary webs, their goal, their job is to impose the will of the centrally dictated cult, what I call the spider at the center, in their sphere of influence. They want to keep from us the very nature of who we are. They want to keep from us that we are consciousness. We are a point of attention within an infinite field of consciousness. I'm having a brief experience called human. The I is really consciousness, eternal consciousness. What this world of the population is designed to do with all its manipulation of information is to get us to self-identify the I, the true I, with our labels. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I am this race, I'm that race, I am this religion, I'm that religion. They are merely experiences that our eternal self, consciousness, awareness is having. But what this manipulation has done all the way through history is to manipulate perception so that we believe that what we're experiencing, briefly, is everything that we are. And when you think and you self-identify with the labels at the expense of the true self, then all you can see is limitation, I can't, it's not possible, which is exactly the perception that this cult wants people in. It doesn't want expanded awareness, sharp thinking, critical thinking people. It doesn't want that. It wants people who self-identify with powerlessness. And a great part of what's going on now psychologically is to infuse even more deeply that sense of powerlessness, that sense of there's nothing we can do. And in the end, it's all psychological, because if you are a few, and at the core of this cult, you get them in one room, then the only way that you are going to be able to dictate and drive the direction of the lives of billions is by controlling their perception. Because from perception comes behavior, and collectively behavior becomes human society. And if you go back, perception, which becomes behavior, is dictated by information received. So you control the information, you dictate to a vast extent perception, thus you dictate behavior. So if you look at global society and national society too, and you picture a pyramid, at the top of the pyramid you've got the inner circle of this cult, and it imposes its will, its agenda on the level below itself. And that level acquiesces to that imposition and then imposes it on the level below itself. So very soon after you come down the hierarchical levels from that inner cult group, you are meeting people in the hierarchy who have no idea there even is a cult. But the same process goes on. The higher level imposes, the lower level acquiesces, and then imposes on the level below it. And then you come down to the bottom of the pyramid where the mass of humanity is. And if we, in our billions, acquiesce to that level of the pyramid which is seeking to impose upon us, i.e. governments, law enforcement, and so on, then we form a circuit, we create a circuit of imposition and acquiescence between the tiny few at the top of the pyramid and the mass of the population. And that circuit means that that tiny few have imposed their will, their agenda, on the entirety of the global population, merely through this imposition acquiescence sequence. And so what's the answer? We break the bloody circuit. We stop acquiescing with our own enslavement. And that, particularly in current circumstances, takes courage. A life without freedom is not a life worth living at all, because eventually everybody's psychology is going to unravel if this goes on and goes on and goes on. And because the psychology, the perception, is the target of this cult, because it knows that if it controls that, it controls everything, that this demolition of human psychology that's going on, it's all planned. If I programmed the computer next to me to do something and I pressed enter, would the computer process that demand through empathy and compassion? No, it doesn't have the ability to manifest those things, so it would just do them, coldly, calculatedly do them. And that, in a sentence, is the mentality of those that are driving this cult.
They don't call first, they just come to your house.
Bree Stevens says an FBI agent told her they were reaching out to every single person whose cell phone put them near the Capitol during the riots. Stevens was out of town, so the agent called her on the phone the FBI had tracked.
You thought it was pretty creepy that they could track your phone
based on it pinging off the towers.
Extremely creepy, because he explained that they have everyone's phone number from pinging off the cell phone towers, and they know basically exactly where you were at.
Some civil rights advocates are concerned about the FBI's ability to harvest data from cell phone towers, like the one here disguised as a tree. The FBI declines to discuss its investigative method.
In the movies, mass surveillance embodies government overreach. But now, surveillance for the good of public health has arrived in the form of contact tracing apps.
This is a great question. It's a complex one. One of the important things is when we look at these things like Google, aggregating information about like how many people are going to retail stores, how many people are out and traveling. Google's got this information. They're showing us this information, as you said, in a pseudo-anonymous way. But what information are they not showing us? What information do they have? How do they gather it? How do they collect it? Google is not, in a meaningful way, a cellular services provider, right? So there's two ways that location information is tracked broadly historically from mobile devices. And now there's a third, which is code tracking applications that sort of piggybacks on a previous one earlier. But we talked earlier about this fabric, all these people you got to trust as your communications cross the internet. The internet is a physical object, right? A lot of people, when they're using like, Wi-Fi or cellular, it's hard to visualize that, to recognize that. You just type in Instagram or whatever, you flick your little finger and, more pictures come up in magic. But think for a minute how that happens. Let's make it simple. Take the internet part of the equation out. When you dial somebody's phone number, wherever they are in the world, or somebody dials your phone number, your phone rings instantly. How? How does that happen? What is required by the architecture as it exists today? And who's activating it? Who made your phone ring, right? Well, the cellular phones are based on security standards. Unfortunately, engineering designs and protocols that were structured in like the 1970s. I mean, they really haven't changed that much. We have new levels of like call encryption. We have new signaling standards to sort of signal things more quickly, send data more quickly, route calls more efficiently. You've of course heard of 2G, 3G, 4G, LTE, 5G, all these things. But the raw bare network, how it's connected, right? The different signaling standards that we're talking about are riding on top of this large global shared network. And many different providers in many different countries operating under many different systems of laws all have to share and interoperate with. And so this is why they have these old janky shared standards. Your phone in your pocket, in your hand, on the table, like even if you're not using it, the screen is off, but it's turned on, it's charged, is right now screaming out in the air, here I am, here I am. And it's going out to the cell phone tower. And cell phone towers are taking notes. They're going, is there anybody who's on this, basically spectrum that's asking for an association, which is the reason that your phone is shouting this stuff out. It's asking for a cell phone tower to pair with it and go, which cell phone tower do I hear the most loudly? And that's sort of a proxy for closeness, for proximity. If they're all using relatively the same levels of power, the one that your phone hears the loudest probably has the highest power. You probably have the best signal to it, and vice versa. Right? You create these pairwise connections, your phone to the nearest cell phone tower. Now, that cell phone tower has a fiber connection, a buried physical glass wire connection. Or it's using like a microwave connection to another building that does have a fiber connection that's buried under the ground. It goes to a data center, right? That's operated by the telecommunications provider, or they're renting space in another data center.
And what they're saying is, I've got these handsets, phone handsets, with these unique identifiers, your IMEI and your IMSI, these mobile identifiers we talked about before. They're baked into your phone. One of them, the IMEI, you can't change, not ever, right? The IMSI, you can change by putting a different SIM card in there. But it doesn't matter because both of these are getting reported to the network. You might think you're being, cute by changing one SIM card to another. You get a different number on your phone. Well, that's not fooling the phone network. You might fool your ex or something like that, but you're not fooling the actual network. And this is happening at every cell phone tower that you pass. You're disassociating from one and you're reassociating with the next. The person that you're trying to call on the other side of the planet is doing the same thing. Now, when you take those location registries for all of these phone companies that are basically sharing access to them and providing lookups for each other to go what phone is at what location, is how your phone rings. What this means is that the phone network knows the location of every handset in the world that's within earshot of these cell phone towers at all times. Now ask yourself, the fact that you were registered or you were associated, you were paired with this cell phone tower at this time, is that getting deleted when you leave that cell phone tower? No. Should it be? Yes. Is it? No. And this is how they create that permanent record of all of our human motions, not for us individually, but humanity at scale. Now, this is the phone companies, right? And they can sell that information, they can share that information, they can rent that information. There's been all kinds of abuse. If you want to learn more about this, look up cell site location information, CSLI, cell site location information. If you have location services enabled on your phone, right, your phone is also getting a GPS signal. It's important to understand, if you turn off location services on your phone, it does absolutely nothing to hide you from the phone network that we just described. That works on whether your cellular radio is turned on. If you're getting a signal, if you're able to connect, if you're able to call people, if you're able to text, if you're able to connect to the internet, location services on or off, your location is known. But that's not necessarily going to Google unless they have a partnership, and in many cases they do. For Google, right, well, they get the GPS connection. They see your phone found this GPS satellite, you're at this location. They can ask your phone, what cell phone towers are you near? And your phone will very helpfully say, I'm near this cell phone tower. And every cell phone tower in the world is geolocated, right? Because the cell phone towers are, someone installed that. And they say, it's at this point, it's at this location, we'll have to service it later. So there's a global database of the world's Wi-Fi access points. Google helped pad that one out, by the way. Remember those Google Street View cards? They were mapping everywhere these Wi-Fi points at the same time they went around. They got in trouble for that at some point. Just like cell phone towers are geolocated, Wi-Fi locations are also being geolocated. It's not always perfect. It's not always up to date. But remember, if you've got location services turned on your phone, if you've got GPS enabled on your phone, or you don't, but your neighbor does, they can hear your Wi-Fi signal through the wall. Even if they can't connect to it, they hear it's there, right? They also, hear the Starbucks next door. They also hear your other neighbor over there. And if Google or whoever is filling out these databases, because lots of the different people are doing it, know, well, Granny's Wi-Fi access point is at exactly this location, because Granny always leaves her GPS on. She just wants to go down the street, get directions accurately. And Granny, her phone can always hear these other Wi-Fi access points. Well, we know those are near her apartment. And 5 doors down, there's your cousin or whoever, and they do the same thing. And the cousin can hear half of the ones that Granny can hear from their phone. But they've got another half that Grannies can't hear, right? Well, they know the half that both of them can hear are probably in between them. And so this is used even for people who don't opt into this, even for people who don't want to be a part of this. Your location is almost always inferenceable if it is not concretely known by the network or by the services that you're interacting with. You can turn off location services and not provide this granular information, right? You can, what you're doing when you turn off location services is you're trying to deny to apps that cell site information. You're trying to deny to apps that GPS information. You're trying to deny to apps that Wi-Fi information. But remember that the cellular network is not going through an app, right? Your phone doesn't get to decide if it shares its location or not. You must provide your location as a result of pairing with that tower. The whole point is there is some information, location information is a great example of it, that cannot be anonymized in a meaningful way. And there is a ton of research about this. You only need 3 known locations of a person in order to de-anonymize their identity in an anonymous location database. This has been demonstrated by the New York Times that tracked, Secret Service agents working for Donald Trump's security detail. It's been done by private security researchers. It can be done by you in your own research. Think about it. If you know someone gave a talk at this time, at this date, they were at this conference, and then they were at another conference in another city at another time, they work at this university, right? And maybe you have something like they were at this restaurant, or, they live at this location, or anything like that. These are points that are going to be unique to that person very quickly. Human movements cannot be anonymized.
This whole stuff happens because we tolerate wrong behaviour and we allow criminals to just do what they do, and we believe all this rubbish they write on paper actually means something. It's unprecedented. We've never seen anything like it. All theatre for the masses, folks, just to keep people distracted and make people think that politics actually means something and that you're actually doing something to improve the situation when you're not. But if you just put it in the headlines like that and bring it to the people, then you can make a big fuss about something so it can be swept under the carpet later and lost amongst the new headlines. Which, of course, is what the majority of all of this political theatre and political rhetoric is for in the first place. But again, so much of it is simply distraction. I mean, the human race is ridiculous when you look at it. If you step back and look at the whole thing, the whole monkey show, it really does look like a monkey show. It's like a circus, folks. You've got this race of people just squabbling amongst each other, arguing over who's the best leader, who isn't the best leader, manufacturing wars against each other, dropping bombs on each other, starving each other, just doing all sorts of outrageous things against each other. Most of it is simply distraction. And of course, looking at it a little deeper, it also becomes very apparent that most of the wars that we've been fighting in the last 100 years, 150 years, have not been fought under the pretext that we think they've been fought for. What they've been mostly about has been simply to erase history, to bomb the infrastructure, to bomb the cities. That's why when countries go to war, it isn't the leaders going to war with each other. What they do is they go and they decimate all of the architecture and all of the old structures that were there from the previous civilizations. That's what most of this has been about. But yeah, that's the current state of the world, folks. It really is a joke when you look at it. And attempting to find a way out of this mess, I mean, it becomes almost an impossible task when you look at just how far humanity has strayed from their path. There are still a lot of good people attempting to suggest better options for humanity and suggest better ways we could do things, but as a whole, the human race has most certainly lost its way. Look at the way we used to do things. Even some of the most simple people on earth, the way we used to do things was so much more efficient and so much more beneficial than anything we seem to be doing today with all of the things we have at our disposal, all the technology, all the stuff we have. We really should be going in a positive direction, but if you look at the human race, we're just not. It's just this massive circus of infighting and squabbling and wars and political rhetoric and social rhetoric and nothing which really helps the human experience at all. A lot of people feel like they need to do more.
You know, people who are good people in their own lives and they're doing what they can to survive. They're living in a conscious way. They're not ripping people off to survive. They're doing what they can, but they feel like they need to be doing more. And it's by realizing these sort of things and realizing how short this experience really is, and all the little things we do that we think mean something very often don't. They may be important to us at the time, but if you look back at your life, you'll find that a lot of the things that you thought were really important and you really had to get done were not important at all. They weren't about you. They weren't about the world. They weren't about improving life on this earth. They were simply some little insignificant goal that you thought meant something at the time, but it didn't. Ultimately, it didn't. You know, and really what this is about is the journey. That's what life is about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about the journey. It's about what you do to improve the human experience along the way, your own experience and the experience of others. How much you find yourself, and in finding yourself, how much you're able to find and connect with others. That's one of the most important things, you know, because when you look at the world, you look at what we've become, you look at all of this technology, where it's leading us. As I've very often said, it's taking our life skills from us. It's taking all of the data from us. It's like this huge smart grid which is gathering the data for the human experience, correlating all the data to see what the current state of human consciousness is at the end of this cycle. And it's removing our life skills from us is one of the most important things to see in this. I mean, and there's so much good in technology. There's so much good stuff we can do with it. But it's got such a hold over us now that even by people attempting to make a difference in the world, it's very difficult to stop the smart grid from where it's going. It's going to be very, very difficult to stop this rolling out because it just has really gotten hold of people, and it's just going to follow its natural course. I don't think there's any way we really can stop it. So that's the way we're going, folks, and there's very little we can do to stop it. The state of the world, folks, it really is chaotic. It's so much like a circus out there. People running around, nobody really knows what they're doing. As I said, it's like a monkey show. You know, I don't see how we can ever change the direction we're going unless there is some type of mass epiphany. We're not going to get it from any type of political rhetoric or any type of political action. The whole political system is corrupt. So there is no remedy in that arena that will ever be found. The only remedy that will be found is when people are prepared to change what's in their hearts. And frankly, I don't see enough people doing that. I mean, it's just a sad reality to have to face, but it is a reality. And the best thing anybody can do, I would suggest, is to be the best person they can be, to establish good relations with people around them so that they have that support group to be able to get through what is coming. And there's still a lot of good people in the world, folks, for all of the terrible stuff that's happening, for all of the infiltration of the truth movement, for all the infiltration into these activist movements. There's still good people. The problem is that we're looking for some sort of external savior, some sort of external source. You know, we join these activist movements because we think the movement itself is going to bring about change. But really, as I said, it's the personal actions, the little things that we can each do every day in our own lives that makes the difference. Another thing is people's craving for information. More and more information. People want to know everything about everything, and they seem to want information. The information life can give them more than the wisdom that life can give them. And that's an important factor as well. Yeah, the problem is that people are so lost and so disconnected from themselves that they look for gratification in these things. You know, this is the crux of the whole thing, folks. This is the key to the whole problem, the loss of self. The fact that people are so disconnected from each other because they're so disconnected from themselves, that's why I've often said if we could just respect ourselves enough, we would find that respect for other people comes by default once that point happens. You know, once you get to that point of self-respect, once you really know yourself and really know what this human experience is, you see all the barriers that you thought existed between you and other people just simply fall away. And it gets very frustrating to see this type of a situation that we've sort of got ourselves into, whereby we're very often simply unable to communicate with each other because we don't know ourselves enough. We don't know how to express ourselves in the right way. And so many people are offended by little things. You know, they have these little scenarios in their mind of how certain social situations should work for them, and if they don't work in that way, or they don't flow the way they want them to, they get offended, they get withdrawn, they sit there and pout because they have a stake in the outcome. They have a stake in the outcome of everything they say. We've got a situation where everybody's had everything taken from them, so everybody has this desperate need to be heard now. This desperate need to do something, to have some form of value, to get enough likes on Instagram, to get enough likes on Facebook, to have some value in the virtual world, because they don't feel like they have value in the real world. And that's the situation we've got. People's need to have value, people's need to be heard, and everyone wanting to clamber to the top of the pile to establish themselves and have their 2 cents worth and throw it in the pot and act like it means something. Now, too many people are simply not prepared to step back a little bit and just take in the bigger picture and see what's really happening here. Unfortunately, most people are simply lost. Most people are looking for something and they're not even sure what it is they're looking for. You really do see why the world is in the state that it's in, and why people are just running around with like chickens with their heads cut off, banging into each other, all attempting to get their voices heard above the cacophony of everybody else. You see exactly why this is. Many of them don't realize that the place that they're looking for is the journey itself, and they're missing out on the journey because they're so focused on what the outcome of the journey will be. Life is what happens while you're planning other things, and it's really important to take that into account. But the important part about it is the journey. It's the moments that you're experiencing every day. This is the place that you're looking for, and very often we're missing out on that place because we think that place exists at the end of the path. We don't realize that the path we're on is the place. There is no other place. There is no place you're going to get to. There is no place of enlightenment. It's the journey itself, and it's what you do with the information that comes to you along the way. But most people have this focal point of what life should be once they've made it, in inverted commas. But what is making it? Making it really is discovering yourself, and that is what life is about, and that is the most important part of life, and that is the most important part of the journey. That is the journey. Life is a journey of self-discovery. There's nothing else to it, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't matter about all the stuff that you collect along the way. It doesn't matter what image you think you've built for yourself. It doesn't matter whether you've built yourself up to be a pop star or this or that. What about you? What have you discovered about you? And what have you gotten from the journey? What do you have to offer other people to help them discover themselves? I mean, there's so much more to this than what we're given to believe, ladies and gentlemen. We're given all these superficial things that we're told we need to measure ourselves up to, when really the entire journey of life is a journey of self-discovery.
We thank you for watching this video and ask you to spread the news. Put this video on your social network or link to it so that you can be part of the anonymous movement. Together we are strong. Together we are anonymous.